Now we are going to finish up our talk on classes by talking about class variables. Now, unlike our instance variables we defined with the attribute accessor, we define our class variables with a double ampersand. Now let me explain what class variables are. Class variables are shared as the exact same value between all instances of your class. They're a constant for all your classes. So, if I wanted to say a car, for instance, has a constant thing about it, I would say every car has 4 wheels. So we're going to say double ampersand wheels is equal to the number 4. So now I'm saying I have a class variable which I can access by doing a double ampersand and saying the variable name anywhere I go inside my instance or anywhere below in the class. Now what I can do to access this outside of my class, I need to define a class method. Now class methods are defined by doing a definition and then doing self dot the method name. So we're going to call it wheels, and then I'm going to do at end, and then I'm going to simply return the at wheels method. In Ruby, the last line is always what's returned, so I'm going to say, hey, give back the at wheels variable. Now, what's different between this method and the max speed method, for instance, is that any class can call its own class methods, and I'm going to show you what that means in a second. But if any sort of instance or object and instances are the same thing, it's what the class blueprint, this class definition, creates in memory. That's what becomes an object. An object is what you can change, what you can actually touch and feel and edit and configure to your settings. That's how we can make different cars with different names and miles per hour, for instance. Now, since we declared a class variable, we're saying, hey, this is consistent across every car. Every car has a certain number of wheels, and this we don't want to edit. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you guys how to access a class variable. We can do this by simply saying class put car.wheels. Note that I'm not making a new car. What I'm doing here is I'm saying car.wheels. So I'm saying my type car here has a method called .wheels. Note that I can't call max speed on cars. I get an error, and that's because it's undefined, and that's because max speed only applies to an instance of my car. When I use the new method to create a car object, assign it to a variable, and then call max speed. But here I have not created a car object on line 22. I'm just saying, hey, does the car class have a class variable, meaning a variable that's consistent, that doesn't need an instance across it? And it does. It has one called wheels. Oops. And so when I call wheels, it simply calls it at 4. Now if I simply run puts car1 dot wheels, I get an undefined method. The method was undefined. This is because this is a class method, and it is not defined within the instance. It's within the instance. It's defined within the class. How do you define a class method? You put self before it. So I did definition right here, self dot, and then gave it a method name. It can be any method name like we've talked about. And that simply gives me back my class variable. So now I can access my class variable. I couldn't do that. I couldn't access my class variable unless I made a method for it. So now that I have self.wheels, I can access that variable from anywhere in my code. I could simply call car.wheels if I wanted to use it in my instance method, and everything would be a-okay. So that's how I can access an instance variable, a class variable, and how I can use it with instance variables. That's pretty cool. So what we learned is instance variables are editable things and things that will be different for each object you create. Class variables are things that are consistent across every object you create and things that you know will not change. So for instance, the number of wheels you will use. Thanks, guys.